Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jersey Jump Shot, the holiday edition of New Jersey's first and only podcast dedicated exclusively to college basketball in the Garden State. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. Steve Edelson, my longtime partner on this podcast and in covering this great sport. And yes, I know it's hard to take me seriously dressed like this, but Steve, this is the holiday spirit. Greetings and welcome to our holiday podcast.
Well, and thankfully we have video now, so we can see it all. It's a thing of beauty. Yeah. Hey, listen, it's been a nice first third of the basketball season, and as you hit holiday time, the conference schedule's right on the horizon. So it's a good time.
Nice might be generous, Steve. There's been some naughty and some nice. As a man and a jolly old man in a big red suit would know. And what I want to do for this podcast is not so much focus on the games as current, although we will reference a few of them. There was a lot to talk about last weekend. Obviously, conference play coming up. What I really like to do is to get into some mailbag questions that I have and, want to answer that people ask a lot of us. And then maybe some New Year's resolutions, to offer some New Year's resolutions for our Jersey programs as I head into the meat of the season. As a mailbag question, and the number one thing, Steve, this is the number one question I get asked the most. Jersey-wide college basketball question. Call it Santa's list, Santa's mailbag, whatever. Is there any way we could have an 8-team holiday tournament, like an all New Jersey holiday tournament? There are 8 New Jersey Division I men's college basketball teams. Could we do an 8-team all New Jersey tournament? And then traditionally, I have always shot this down and said there's no chance, it'll never happen. But I'm starting to think maybe there is somewhat of an opening. I'm going to say a small opening. I don't want to make it sound like this is imminent or even in discussion. But I think now it's not the totally remote closed-door possibility. And I want to point to the Big Five Classic, Steve. The Big Five was sort of dying in relevance, the Philadelphia tradition that goes back decades. And they revived it by adding Drexel 6 teams, splitting it into 2 pods. And they play the 2-3-team pods like round robin style on campus sites. And then a championship game at the Wells Fargo Center. And the juice for this has been very good. The turnout's been high. They're getting like 15,000 people to the champion. It's not just a championship game. It's a triple header, right? So wherever you finished in your pod, the third place teams meet for the last game, and then the second place teams meet, and the winners meet for the championship game. They've drawn like 15,000 people for this at the Wells Fargo Center. So what do you think of that as a model? And could this ever possibly happen in New Jersey?
Well, I think it's interesting because of the era of college basketball we're in right now with NIL and all. If you could round up some nice sponsors for that, and you have good attendance for games, and maybe there's a financial benefit to this for teams where everybody could bank a little bit of NIL, based on, Rutgers and even, teams like FDU or something could get some. So I think if you could get the right sponsors and the right setup, maybe you can do something like that.
And that's why it comes to mind. Like you just nailed it, Steve. With the answer is money could open the door, right? And so, we already know, we've discussed at length how our mid-majors, and we'll get into King Rice and Monmouth. They finally played at home. Also FDU, they've been playing these crazy schedule on the road at these high majors. Mostly just to make money, right? Because they get these guarantee fees, basically our appearance fees. But also that now has trickled up, so to speak, to the high majors. Like, why is Seton Hall going to play Hofstra in this event this doubleheader on Long Island? Because there are appearance fees involved. Why is Rutgers, playing? Obviously, they went to Las Vegas for an appearance fee and played in that great tournament there on Thanksgiving week. And a lot of these feast weeks are now going to be like, you give an appearance fee or you go extinct. That seems to be like the thing of the future. Rutgers-Princeton, there's been there's a neutral site. There's been an appearance fee money involved in these games. So that's sort of the wave of the future, right? So can these schools, would the mid-majors sign on? I think without question, right, Steve? Don't you think New Jersey's 6 mid-majors would sign on for this in a heartbeat? You get this You get 3 games because it's an 8-team tournament, but you get to play consolation games. You get 3 fixed games. You don't have to travel, and you get possibly a small appearance fee. Would they sign on for that?
Absolutely, I think they would, and just the recognition of being in a part of something like that, I think would be tremendous for those programs.
The question is, would the high majors sign on? And that is a stickier deal because
Right.
the number one sticking point, and we can look at how St. Joe's and Villanova resolve this. Number one sticking point is if you had a tournament, an open tournament, it could potentially forfeit the annual Garden State Hardwood Classic between Rutgers and Seton Hall, which is a must-have event, right? It sells out in the home buildings, and there's a lot involved there as far as the trophy, a series that both fans on both sides really love, even when one team is bad. And the games are usually very good. So you don't want to abandon that. What St. Joe's and Villanova did was, and it's this little different situation, but they put St. Joe's and Villanova in the same pod every year. So they're guaranteed to play in one of the round robin games, alternating the home sites. So basically they have kept that Holy War tradition alive where there's a game at Villanova and there's a game at St. Joe's. They've just wrapped it into the Big Five Classic. So St. Joe's and Villanova can never meet in the championship game. They'll never meet on that championship day in the Big Five Classic, but they'll always play their game as one of the early rounds. So that's how they did it. Pretty smart. So, it's an 8-team tournament here we're talking about. The mechanics are different. You wouldn't have like a pod per se, but you'd have 2 brackets. But could Seton Hall and Rutgers, what you would do then, they would play in a quarterfinal every year. The quarterfinal and the semifinal would be on home sites alternating, and Seton Hall and Rutgers would continue their game as part of sort of the quarterfinal round of this 8-team tournament. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you would look at that and say, okay, how competitive then is the rest of the tournament? Now, I think
Right.
what you've seen from New Jersey mid-majors this year, those games have been very competitive. St. Peter's, Rutgers, St. Peter's, Seton Hall, all those games, Princeton, obviously. Right. I mean, so certainly this year, I think it'd be a very competitive tournament. I'm not sure it'd be like that every year, but the way it's been going, I think it could be a very good tournament.
You'd put Princeton on the opposite side of the bracket for sure. So they would be on the opposite side of Rutgers, Seton Hall, because they're the other team. I mean, they could legitimately make a claim to being the best team in the state now and in many years. And I saw on social media, Princeton's social media is appropriating the Garden State, the Boardwalk Trophy and sticking their logo on it, right? And in their geographical location. I got to say that was pretty clever, and I give them credit. And so, they would be on the opposite side. So the chances are fair that you would have the Rutgers Seton Hall winner playing Princeton in this championship game. And then the other thing is, what site would it be? Because, the Big Five Classic has the ability to play at the Wells Fargo Center, which Villanova, it's an alternate home site for them. They play a minority of their conference games there. The Prudential Center is really probably the only site that fits that bill, right? Trenton's a non-starter after the mess there when Rutgers-Princeton played there a couple of years ago. Yeah. There's really no other site. I mean, you wouldn't drag all these teams to Boardwalk Hall probably. It's just too far out of the way geographically in Atlantic City. I don't know that there's another place on Garden State soil that fits the bill. So you'd have the Prudential Center, which is Seton Hall's home court. That's their full-time home court as a site of the championship games. I don't know that would be so much of a holdup because it's not like Rutgers would have to play there every year. That game would be alternating sites in the quarterfinal. So I don't know, Steve. It's something to think about. Would Princeton, who plays anywhere, have any problem playing Seton Hall in a championship game at the Prudential Center? Probably not, right, Steve?
No, I don't think so. I mean, listen, I think it's a great idea. I think maybe the environment is right for something like this right now, right. And I think it could be great for New Jersey basketball.
So I have changed my mind a little bit. I was always absolutely not, and then I looked at the Big Five Classic and how well that's been received, and I looked at the fact that now a lot of these tournaments are paying these appearance fees, and that could be the difference maker, especially if some of this Feast Week stuff goes the way of the dodo, Steve. If they're not going to, if they're just going to pay expenses to go to the Charleston Classic or whatever, Maui or whatever, maybe those schools are going to stop going to those. And so this all is, of course, is predicated on some big sponsor, right? You'd have to have a big corporate sponsor or a group of sponsors, some sort of sponsorship group that would then make sure these teams could get a cut of the gate or whatever the appearance fee would be that would make it worth their while. Okay, we're planting a seed here, right? That's what this is about. So that's the number one mailbag question I get. And I don't want to say definitively no to it. When you think about it, it definitely has some potential. Maybe it could happen at some point. All right. And then the two other quick things that came up as a result of games last weekend. Seton Hall played Georgetown, lost by 1, heartbreaking loss, but they brought Mark Bryant back. And I know you know Mark Bryant well, Steve, and what he means to New Jersey college basketball. They brought him back to have a Mark Bryant day, and he got a tremendous ovation. And really, it was great to see, 7,000 people giving him an extended standing ovation. Columbia High School grad and Seton Hall great who helped launch the program under PJ Carlissimo. And a few people have asked me, like, why doesn't Seton Hall retire Mark Bryant's 00? They have this Legend series they're doing now. They brought Danny Calandrillo, who I know you know well. They brought Danny back. He's a former All-American. They honored him at the Monmouth game. And then they honored Mark Bryant. These are guys whose jerseys are not retired, but they devoted a day to them, which was a really nice gesture, and the old school fans loved it. I was at halftime. At the end of halftime, I was walking through the concourse against Georgetown, and fans were lined up to talk to Mark Bryant and take pictures with him. I don't know how much of the second half he actually saw. He's so popular and has such a high place in the pantheon for the Pirates. The answer is, why don't they retire Mark Bryant's jersey? Is they've already retired 8 jerseys. 8's a lot when you're taking numbers out of circulation for recruits and people coming in. There's only so many jerseys, and I know you can have up to number 99 now in college basketball, but most of these players are still using the traditional 0 through 5 numbers because that's what they grow up with, right? Playing in rec league, high school, AAU, whatever. So Seton Hall has 8 jerseys out of circulation already that are retired, and they probably should only have 4 or 5. They retired too many probably, but you can't just unretire somebody's jersey, right? Unless maybe they go to jail. But I mean, you can't do that. So that's sort of leaves Seton Hall in a bind. Mark Bryant and Dan Calandrillo, could they do something like Rutgers has done, a ring of honor? It's a little hard when like the Prudential Center is not. It's really not your court. It's the Devil's court. It's hard to have a ring of honor there. There's already so many things hanging from the rafters there. Could they hang their jerseys in Walsh, unretired numbers, but hang their jerseys as a sort of a ring of honor in Walsh? Maybe that might be a good compromise. Steve, how many jerseys does Monmouth have retired?
Boy, in terms of actual numbers,
right?
I'm not sure they have any.
I don't think any. Right? They don't have any.
I don't. There are none that I know of hanging from the ceiling. It's just NCAA banners. So I'm going to say none.
So Rutgers has only 3, right? And so the three AP All-Americans that have come through that program. And so Rutgers instituted the Ring of Honor to add some more names to that, where the name will appear with the number, but the number doesn't get taken out of circulation. What do you think of that idea? Is that something that schools should explore? Give me your thoughts on Mark Bryant's importance and what should they do with this guy's number?
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be a way to honor him. And I mean, honestly, even if it's putting his jersey with his name on it and the number in the rafters at Walsh Gym, I mean, can people still wear the jersey? Is that disrespectful? I don't know.
Other schools have done stuff like that. Like, now, like Mike Dabney's jerseys, his numbers hanging in the rack, but you can wear his number still. They did this Ring of Honor thing. So there's maybe ways around that. Yeah.
Does Princeton have numbers retired? I don't even know that.
Only Bill Bradley.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure he's the only one.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's obviously a super high bar.
Yeah.
So that's Seton Hall lowered that bar. Now they're trying to deal with it, but it would be nice to see them do more than just a day for Mark Bryant and have some permanent recognition in Walsh Gym for him. Really a place he helped Seton Hall move out of, in a lot of ways. So just thought there. And then some people have asked me, look, Rutgers-Princeton, Steve, was such a great game. So exciting. 1-point drama at the Prudential Center. People have asked me, could this series ever go back to playing home and home? And I think maybe there could be a 2-for-1. There'll never be a straight home and home. Okay. That ship has sailed. Could they come up with some sort of 2-for-1, starting at Rutgers and then Princeton back at Rutgers, a 2-for-1 series? What do you think, Steve? What do you think of that game, and what do you think of the future of this series?
Great game. Hope it continues for New Jersey basketball. I hope it continues, but financially, again, it comes down to finances. And I think for Rutgers, it's a tough deal financially, right? I mean, to commit to saying we're going to play a game at Princeton, at a time when you really need to drive revenues, that's a tough commitment.
Yeah, whereas you can get some sort of appearance fee, perhaps, for playing in something like the Never Forget Tribute Classic on a neutral court, which had also a great atmosphere. So I think it would be fun to see this home and home. 2-for-1 is probably the best you're going to get if you're Princeton. Makes maybe a lot more sense than a straight home and home for Rutgers. But I'd love to see it on campus sites. But financially, will the incentive be there? That's a good question, Steve, because that's what it's all going to come down to. So that I don't think it's impossible. I do think that idea has been floated in the air, in the back channels and the discussions. Will it actually come to fruition? I don't know. I do think the series will continue, Steve. I think this was such a resounding success on a lot of levels. Yes, Rutgers took a loss and a potential quad 3 loss, right? Because there's a neutral site. We'll see. Princeton can get that up to a 2. But I do think, based on the turnout, 10,000 plus Rutgers fans, you had a national television stage, you had a terrific game. I do feel like I can't see Steve Peichel just taking his ball and going home. That's just not him, right? So I don't think he's going to do that. I think it's going to continue. Can they get to home sites? I don't know. I don't think it's impossible. But probably, if I'm guessing, it stays in the same neutral format. We'll see. All right. Now, New Year's Eve coming up, New Year's Day. I want to ask you, Steve, anything Monmouth-wise, questions you get asked a lot that you want to throw into this mailbag? What do you want to air on the Monmouth end from what fans are always asking? What do they want to know that you can maybe answer for them?
Well, I think fans are asking, Monmouth's 2-10 heading to number 2 Auburn on Monday. So, in all likelihood, 2-11 going into CAA play. Can Monmouth really be competitive in the CAA? And what I would say is brutally tough schedule. We've been over all this, and they probably have the MVP of the league in the CAA, and Abdi Bashir Jr., who continues to play really well. Scored 27 against Fairfield last week in a game that Monmouth was up 20 points in that game in the first half. They really dominated it. So I guess what I would say is I think Monmouth can be competitive in the CAA, and we're going to see right away. They play Stony Brook at home to open, and Stony Brook is struggling. If you win that, a week later you have UNCW and Charleston coming to your place, a chance to make a bit of a statement. So what I would say on
yes.
Monmouth is,
the answer is yes. Monmouth can be competitive in the CAA. They can fit in this league. Abdi Bashir, nice win over Fairfield. From Monmouth, by the way.
Yeah. So, I think that's kind of the takeaway on Monmouth is if they can kind of tear off the calendar and start anew in January, they've got a shot. So.
All right, let's go to New Year's resolutions. Each of us will throw one out there. New Year's resolutions for the teams. And then we'll jump down the list here. Let's start with Rutgers. My New Year's resolution for Rutgers, which needs to get moving now. We've been very patient with Rutgers, definitely more patient than fans. And of course, that's always part of the deal, right? Fans are fans. But we've been patient with Rutgers and waiting for the development of this group to come together, giving the freshmen some time to learn the defensive tricks of the trade. The time for patience is running out because Rutgers now has to just win some games. And once they get past Columbia at home on the 30th, and Columbia is not bad, by the way. Columbia is not bad. You better show up against Columbia. It's a bunch of seniors who've been playing together, and they've been winning some games. They won at Villanova. So, but then you're going to have all these quad 1 opportunities, right? Starting at Indiana, and then you have Purdue, and you have all these big win opportunities. Rutgers has got to start winning some of them, playing the type of game they played against Penn State at home, which was their best game of the season. My resolution for Rutgers is, what do they need to figure out a formula to get better defensively, and does that mean Steve tinkering with some of his longtime principles? Does he need more ball pressure? Does he need to extend the defense, maybe a zone press? Does he need to play more zone? Does that make it easier for his freshmen who are not playing great defense? Obviously, they're scoring the ball great. Does that make it easier for his freshmen to make use of their length? Does that make, and maybe the principles of his man-to-man that are maybe not getting grasped in time, stuff that he's drilled into his teams over a period of years in the past? Does that make it easier to use PJ Hayes and Zach Martini, 3-point shooters who can't stay on the court because they're being taken advantage of in your man-to-man pick and roll situations? and maybe Tyson Acuff too, who is still coming back from a broken foot. Does it make it easier to use these shooters, keep them on the court if you're putting them in a zone defensively in a type of zone situation? Can you get more out of your transfers that way? That's my New Year's resolution for Rutgers is for Steve Peichel to figure out how to get more out of this group on the defensive end, maybe looking at some unconventional things outside of what he normally does because of his compressed timetable he's dealing with. Your New Year's resolution for Rutgers, Steve, what do you think?
My New Year's resolution for Rutgers is pretty much the same. They have to play better defense, right? Because you can't give up 80 points a game and expect to win a lot of games. So I think defense is going to be the key. They've shown they can certainly score enough points. They're, as you said, they're going to have a lot of chances for quad one, for important wins in the Big Ten. And I think defense is what's going to have to be the difference in some of those games.
And I recognize rebounding is always an issue out of a zone, right? And Rutgers isn't rebounding well to begin with. I mean, the counter to that would be, well, they're not rebounding well anyway. Might as well play better defense. It's not an easy solution, but that's why Steve is the head coach, right? So that's the number one resolution for them. They have to tighten it up on the defensive end and fast. And maybe doing some different things is a way to do that. Seton Hall, my New Year's resolution for Seton Hall is to find a point guard. The rest of the season has to be devoted to finding a point guard. Seton Hall now has a star. They have a star now, not a budding star, a star in Isaiah Coleman. The guy is playing at an all Big East level. He's a sophomore, positionless type of player, really a huge asset to them. Obviously, we'll get into when the season ends, the priority of keeping him on board. But as far as the rest of the season goes, can they find a point guard to help take a little load off of him? Like Seton Hall lost the game against Georgetown. Look, there's different reasons why they lost, but down one last possession, they fumbled the ball away, trying to get him a dribble handoff and get him going downhill in a game where the whistles were being blown very tight. And so that's where you need a point guard, And so that's the question. Do they have one in Garway Dual, the Providence transfer who has been up and down? He's definitely gotten better defensively. Do they have one in Jasim Felton, this freshman who is a nephew of former Knicks point guard Raymond Felton, who has shown some really good offensive skill for a first-year player? He has a long way to go defensively, which probably keeps him off the court. Can they find a point guard? And that's, you have a point guard now, and you have Isaiah Coleman. You have some nucleus moving forward later this season, going into next year. That's something to maybe build around for Shaheen Holloway. Steve, your one New Year's resolution for the Hall.
New Year's resolution for the Hall is Shaheen Holloway has to get back to coaching like Shaheen Holloway. I think he has failed to kind of get through to this team in a lot of different ways. I think there's been some mistakes in game, particularly late in games, that have cost them. I think it's going to be up to Shah to kind of get this thing turned in the right direction. And as you said, he's got to do it quickly.
Right. And so that's Seton Hall. Obviously, no one is expecting them to go anywhere this year, but some of this is for getting momentum. Like you finish well, you get some momentum going into the offseason. Maybe for next year, you can turn the page, right? And you can do that quickly now in college basketball if you do the right things. Princeton, my New Year's resolution for them is, and this is something they need, if Princeton can ever develop a center, that team is going to be dangerous in March. And Malik Abdullahi, this freshman, this 6'8" freshman, look, 8 points, 4 rebounds against Rutgers, 3 offensive boards. This guy is coming on fast. If they can ever get him up to speed by March, by the time it's, the Ivy Madness, look out because the rest of the pieces are there for the Tigers. Your thoughts on Princeton?
My thoughts on Princeton, my resolution is lean on the stars. I mean, they have 2 superstars on that. And you saw early in the year, Caden Pierce, you were thinking, maybe he's not the same Caden Pierce. Well, listen, you've seen recently, he is the same Caden Pierce, and he was National Player of the Week. So I think Princeton has the 2 best players in the Ivy League. Lean on those guys, and I think they'll be going to the NCAA tournament.
Monmouth, Steve, New Year's resolution for Monmouth. You go first.
New Year's resolution for Monmouth is believe, right? Believe that they can do it, even though they've taken a lot of lumps early in the year. They have talent. It's getting into league play. They have the best player in the league. I think they have a chance.
My New Year's resolution, Steve, would be for Monmouth fans to support this team at home, right? What a difference it made. And King Rice said something about this when they came home and played Fairfield after all those road games, Steve. What was that like for Monmouth? How different were things to be home for them?
Well, it was great. And they closed last year with 13 straight home wins. So this was their 14th straight home win. So, and honestly, and I wrote this, if for nothing else, come and see Abdi Bashir Jr. play, right? I mean, he's part of this incredible guard play that's going on in the state this year, and go see him in person.
And that building has tremendous potential as a home court advantage. So, and that's kind of what I would wrap up and say for other mid majors too. And it's been a tough year so far for New Jersey's mid majors, but you don't know, can St. Peter's contend in the MAC? Now they're in an 0-2 hole, but yeah, we think they can. Can FDU compete in the Northeast Conference? We think they can. There's some these teams have some players, right, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely.
And NJIT might be a year away. Okay, they're developing a young team, still taking some lumps. Obviously, they have to keep some of those guys. You know, Ryder has sort of hit the skids a little bit. They're in a transition period after losing a lot. But my New Year's resolution would be for these mid-major teams that have to go to all over God's green earth to play games and collect their paychecks, for them to have some home cooking, for them to have some fans come home and support them so they can gain some momentum in conference play, which is really where it's at for them, right? So right now, if you were to say to me right now, look, how many teams are making the NCAA tournament from New Jersey? I would say I feel good about Princeton. Rutgers got a lot of work to do, and I don't know if anybody else is going to make it, but that could change quickly in mid-major land if these teams start to get some momentum in conference play. So we hope that New Jersey, with their great college basketball fans, come out and support these teams at home in January, February, into March. And that's the New Year's resolutions. Our other resolution is to continue to bring you Jersey Jump Shot, to talk Jersey college hoops to the hardcore fan. I promise I won't wear a blinking Santa hat again this season, but maybe next year we'll bring it back. Right, Steve? The battery is going to die on this thing soon. But thank you for tuning in. We wish you the happiest of holidays, happy New Year, happy hoops year, and we'll see you on the other side in 2025.